Welcome back to Grace, Love, and After the Service, a podcast of St. John Lutheran Church in East Liverpool, Ohio. I'm Pastor Eric Edwards.
I'm Josh Grafton.
And I'm Andrew McCarty.
And today we're going deeper into a sermon I gave recently called Rest for the Weary. There is a link in the description below this podcast if you'd like to listen to it ahead of time.
Yeah, so this one's actually pretty recent. You gave this on July 5th, right after the America 250 celebration.
Woo!
It's 8 minutes long, and as the title suggests, it's all about rest for the weary and how we can come to Jesus with those burdens that we carry in everyday life.
Yes, that famous verse that everybody knows and likes to quote, especially when you're going through a difficult time, right? Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens.
We paint this on signs. You know what I mean? Even non-Christians have heard this, and even when I was one, I heard it a lot, and I never knew what it actually meant.
It just means give everything to Jesus, right? It's that easy.
It's that simple.
Just give everything to Jesus.
It just goes
you
away.
You have no worries in this life. Just give it all to Jesus. It's all going to be fine anyway, right?
Right, and that's an issue I think too. Like, right, we kind of stitch that on a pillow, we put it on our bumper sticker, and we think, oh well, I'll just give it to Jesus, and then we kind of write things off to it. But you give it to Jesus, but you're still going to have to deal with whatever is causing it anyway.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I think in my experience, whenever you do hand something over to Jesus, whether it be like anger, worry, fear, just an everyday thing, you don't really come to Jesus and hand it to him until you're ready to deal with it. There's a lot of times you can say, yeah, Jesus, I'm ready for you to take this, but you're not really ready, and so you never actually deal with it, and the problems linger. So I think a lot of times when you actually are ready and fully do give it over, it's almost like an acceptance of the way things are. You know what I mean?
And even after you give it to Jesus, sometimes like you're like, you're doing that thing where you're like hand it to somebody and then you like pull it back. You're like, I don't know if I'm ready to give this to you or not.
Maybe I'll hold on to the anger
can I just
part.
hold on to it?
Right? And the
for
whole
another
thing
minute.
is not like to turn it all over, right? Like the idea is to let Jesus help you carry that burden. Jesus's burden is light, is what this says. Therefore, he's able to help us carry ours. You're being yoked together. This isn't just dump it all on Jesus's back and then, go and play. It's very much, I will help you carry this burden, as opposed to I will take it from you.
So, I collapse to the ground like my 5-year-old and say, carry me, Jesus. No, Jesus even says, I think a couple times, my yoke is easy.
And my burden is light.
Yep.
Yes.
So what does Jesus mean when he says, my yoke is light?
Okay, so a yoke is what you tie oxen together with so they can work as a team. So it's kind of a funky-shaped beam that sits across the two beasts, and they carry it together. They're pulling a plow, something along those lines. And so it's being able to yoke yourself to Jesus so that you can work this together, because you're still going to have to do the actions. You're still going to have to make the changes. You're still going to have to go through all of these things, but you don't have to go through it alone. That's the point, is not going through it alone. If you are an oxen wearing a yoke and nothing is yoked to you, you're going to be completely out of whack, right? Like it's like driving on 3 tires. It just doesn't work.
The interesting part about this is when you do yoke together with Jesus and you come up with it's always a positive change when you're truly yoked, right? Like you don't go backwards when you yoke yourself to Jesus and try to figure something out.
It can feel like you are.
It can, but in reality you're not.
Yeah.
Because it's just not how it works. But anyway, whenever you're doing it and you finally get over something, you get through something, every time I look back on it, it's like, I don't know where his work began and mine ended. You know what I mean? They're so interchanged and intertwined. Like you don't know which piece was you and which piece was him. It's almost as like, I'm not sure.
Until you reach a point where it's like, almost like hindsight is 2020. Like I just had a really good conversation just yesterday, actually, with a former teacher of mine, like a huge influence in my career and just like a great friend now. But we were talking about like all the things that, we face on a daily basis. And then you get to a point almost where you like look back and you're like, oh, like there it was. Like There was Jesus right there. And like I just didn't recognize it in the moment. But then years down the road or like months down the road or whatever, you're like, yeah, okay, like I get it. Like, okay, God, like I get it.
I've done that with my own short journey where I look back and at first you're like, it's all me. I made the choice and all this stuff to come here and do all this stuff. And then you look back and you're like, nope, there was Jesus's influence. Nope, there he was there.
And it's so glaringly obvious too. Like you're like, how did I miss
Yeah,
that in
you
the
feel
moment?
so silly.
But it's important, I think, to constantly go back into those moments of your life and to evaluate those and to say, where was God? And to find God in all those places, because the more of those you pile up and the more of those you can look back on, that's what helps you get through the later stuff. When you start going through the crisis, when you start going through the time where life begins to fall apart, you can look backwards and say, God was there, God was there, God was there, God was there. So when you hit the question of where is God now, you can look back and say, God was there, God will be here as well too. I can have that faith, even if I can't feel God here, if at this moment feels God forsaken, I can still say God is here and I can trust that because God was there and there and there and there and there and there and there.
Mm-hmm. And even like the reason it came up in the conversation was like even the most like basic things that don't seem like they're from God or like a gift from God, when you sit back and you like look at the big picture, you're like, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have, applied for this or done this or, tried this thing that eventually led to, the ultimate like ending that we're at or like the point where we're at in our lives. So it's just nice sometimes to like take a step back and see the big picture and see like where God intervened on our behalf.
So let's make something clear within that as well, though, that God isn't making the bad stuff in your past happen so that X, Y, and Z can take place. But the bad thing happened, and now what did God do with it? God it was able to make X, Y, and Z
And
happen.
how did you respond to it?
Right. But that it isn't, when we're going through something terrible in our life, it's not, why is God putting me through this? Well, God isn't putting us through it. This broken world is putting us through it. Now what can God do with it?
Yeah, I think like that's the reason why I don't want to say like twisted, but like almost like my view of like God as this like puppet master, like controlling everything in the universe has really impacted like even now as I'm, exploring this new chapter in my faith, like it's hard to get this image of like this all powerful, like puppet master God, like, putting these things in your path and like sitting back and watching, like, what's he going to do? Like, I wonder, how's he going to react to this? Or, because that for the longest time, that's the way that I was taught. And unfortunately, that's how I interpreted God and religion and faith. Like every choice that I made in my life was either a punishment or a setup for something else to happen in life.
Which could be a punishment.
And it
Right?
inevitably ended up being a punishment, in the long run, because then you start punishing yourself and you start feeling this overwhelming sense of guilt and shame, which I'm sure we're going to touch on because you talked about it in the sermon. But like, God is not this puppet master that's like, let's see how we can push Andrew down and step his nose into the dirt.
It's abusive,
even more,
right? Like this idea of this abusive God who's just like, I'm going to beat on you for 90 years of your life just to see how you respond. I'm going to test you,
And then
I'm going to put you through trials, and the minute you don't do that, I will send you to
I'm gonna
hell.
smite you, yeah.
Right? Like that is
The
not
reason
what God is like.
The second you question anything, or the second you have any shade of doubt in your mind, you're a sinner and you're a bad person. You're a terrible. Like this is my mindset, and it's messed up in a way, and it that's part of the reason why I've had to like take these steps to.
And doesn't
remedy
that feed on itself?
Yeah.
Too, like
it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, like in that mindset, God set me up for this test. I failed it, which we're bound to do. God punished me, and then God's going to set you up again, and it's a continuous like the gotcha God, right?
So how did you feel walking in to St. John in our new member class where you get the chart and it explains that no, you actually have all this free will under Lutheran theology?
I remember very vividly like this overwhelming sense of like weight off of my shoulders, like just melting in my seat. Like when I saw that diagram and you said like, you're good, like you're covered. That was the first time, honest to God, like, can I say that?
Sure.
We'll allow it.
That was the first time, like honest to God, like that was the first time that I had been told that your sins are dead, buried, and out of the way. You are completely covered. My entire life, I was living in fear that everything that I did was under a microscope, and that every test that I faced was a test of my faith and my will to keep going, and like all these things. And that's a very unhealthy mindset to come in. And I can tell you very vividly, when we were going through our new members class and things like that, hearing that good news for the first time was freeing. And it was just like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. It's hard to describe, but I know you have probably experienced something very similar. Like,
Mine was easier because I didn't have to undo all of this like puppet master God theology, which just doesn't even sound very faithful by God. Like, why would your loving father do that? What's the point at that point? You know what I mean? So the theology when we came in here, it jived with the way I was probably leaning anyway. So yeah. So it was good news.
So if you're in a cycle where you're believing that God is constantly testing you, you're constantly failing, and then God's setting you up again, the problem becomes with the result of all of this, right? Like, you go through that type of a faith cycle, and then you deal with something like depression, anxiety, and all of those become failed tests, or what feel like punishment for failed tests. You know what I mean? We see this way too often in the church, where people are dealing with clinical depression, severe anxiety, social problems, mental illnesses, things in that realm. And all of a sudden, they're thinking that they have failed God, or God has abandoned them, or they have just screwed up so much that they should feel this way because that's just part of atoning for it, or something ridiculous like that. I've certainly been there before, and I was even raised Lutheran, but my knee-jerk reaction is, what must I have done to make
earn
this
this,
happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
To earn this punishment.
I deserve to be punished because I am bad.
Or I feel this anxiety and fear that I shouldn't because I have faith, therefore I am a bad Christian.
Right.
I'm not a faithful person if I feel these things. That's simply not true, but it's easy to feel that way.
Mm-hmm. So I came from the mindset that you are punished on this earth, or you have to undergo trials and tribulations as sort of these tests to see if you are worthy to go to heaven, or whether you are, going to be condemned to hell. So there are people in my life actively that are trying to persuade me and others that their actions in this life have consequences in this life, and that the punishments or the things that you're undergoing in this life are almost like a penance to earn your way into heaven. And
so you're atoning by all of these things?
it would appear, yeah. I mean, this is the. I hate throwing out the T word, but there it is again, like that spiritual trauma where you feel like you are so horrible of a person. It turns that shame, like you said in the sermon, like I have done wrong, into I am wrong. So everything I do now is framed through this lens of like, I am wrong, I'm doing wrong. And it can really weigh on you. So I think that that's why this sermon really like struck a nerve for a lot of people, struck a chord with a lot of people, because it's not just an isolated experience. Like, we're all experiencing it in some way.
Well, and there are things that have their authentic repercussions that you would say, yes, this is a causality. This was the action that was taken in your life. This is what it produced, right? If you chain smoke 3 cartons of cigarettes a day, and you do that for 20 years, you can't be shocked when you have something wrong with your lungs. But that's not to say it's punishment for that. That's a repercussion of that particular action. But not everything that happens to you can be put back to, well, if you wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Some things is just living in a broken world, and living in a broken world is going to give you broken results.
Yep. And I will say, like, there is a positive spin to this mindset that I have taken into my teaching career, and also in my faith and my personal life and my family life with friends. It often leads me to do more for others because I'm trying to help others, like, prevent their own downfall or prevent their own, so I'm trying to, I teach my kids the very thing that I'm guilty of, what I'm saying, like, as far as like anxiety and, We were just talking about this yesterday too. Like, this friend that I met with yesterday, the circle of control, right? I'm teaching, my students, these are the things that are beyond your control. But God put that in my life to teach my kids because it's almost like that's what I need to hear. You know what I mean? Like, I'm teaching my kids the very thing that I need to hear the most. So it does have like a positive spin when you are helping others. And that, with this podcast, I feel like we're, extending a hand and trying to, get the gospel and get the good news out there and stuff. It makes me work harder to try and help others. At the same time, I'm hurting myself because I'm telling myself that I'm garbage and I'm this, and all these things. I'm not working towards bettering myself because I'm trying to pour everything I have into other people. So we're working on it. We're working on that, finding that healthy balance. But if there is something positive to come out of it, I would say that that's something that I take very seriously, is like trying to help other people with their problems and trying to get other people to, I don't know, try and help them in any way that I can.
No, that resonates with me, especially the part where you're willing to teach and show other people the right way, but not yourself.
Mhm.
It's the same thing like with
Yeah.
sin. If you and I went out and committed the exact same sin under the exact same circumstances, I would be like, of course you're forgiven, Andrew. It's no big deal. Then for me, I would beat myself up over
Yep.
it for
I'm
7 years.
I'm my biggest critic.
Yep. Because I know better. I am better. I should have known. I shouldn't have done this. I should have done that. Blah, blah, blah. And then that guilt turns into shame, and here we are. So you listed in this sermon 4 different burdens that we all carry. And there's more, obviously, but these are...
Narrowing it down to 4 took work.
I'm sure it was difficult to classify these because we all carry some level. I think that's why this is so universal, is because everybody carries one of these burdens. You list work.
Or all of them.
Yeah. So you list work, sin, grief, and fear. That's some heavy stuff. And it's inescapable if you live a life in this broken world.
Absolutely.
And I guess my question to you guys is like, since it touched everybody who heard it, like which one resonated with you the most? Was it the work, the sin, the grief, the fear? For me personally, it was the fear. Because like I'm afraid all the time. And it took me like half of a life now at 35 years old to learn that it was okay to admit that I was afraid instead of burying that beneath anger and like pretending not to care.
Well, and you're a man, right? So
So
you're
you're
not
not
supposed to be
allowed.
afraid. You're supposed to be tough and blah, 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 and all that garbage
Yeah,
that
you're the head of
society
the
teaches.
household.
And I am horrified all the time. I'm afraid of people around me. I'm afraid for my kids. I'm afraid for my job. I'm afraid for my wife. Like, I'm afraid of so many things because I can't do anything. I can't control anything. And I try and I try and I try and it doesn't work. And only bad stuff happens the more I put my hands on it and try to control it. And I think that's what resonates with me, is if I tie that yoke to Jesus, I don't have to. He knows better. He'll get me through it. But my own like machinations and schemes and plots, they don't work. And it's just me wanting control. And that's the beauty about bringing your weariness to the risen Christ, is like you can just accept the way things are and move forward with faith rather than so much of this fear.
And to know that you have a God in Christ, you have a God who understands fear and has felt fear. Like there's one thing to be like, well, God knows what fear means. In Jesus Christ, God knows how fear feels, right? Like, so Jesus is well aware of what's going to happen at the crucifixion, is well aware that the resurrection is on its way as well. Like, he gets what's about to happen over the course of those 3 days. Yet he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating blood. I mean, that's some serious fear. Like if the Son of God is allowed to be afraid of things, certainly you can too.
I feel like every time he's with me, he's just weeping. He's never smiling. He's always like, oh, Josh.
Well, you'd be shocked at how much Jesus smiles at you. And that's true of everyone. I think we'd all be surprised of how much Jesus actually looks at us and smiles and goes, man, you're doing good. Like, I'm proud of you. We because we're so used to the idea of judgment within faith, whether it's the judgment of God the Father or Christ or something like that, that judgment has always been this heavy theme in the church, that we have forgotten that Jesus still looks at us and goes, I love you. Like, you are good. Like, Andrew, you are good. Josh, Jesus smiles at you regularly. That's actually kind of hard to hear, right?
It is.
Because
It
it's
is.
not what we're used to.
It's very strange that I carry this like hardcore internal judgment and then worship like the very compassionate, loving God. That I don't actually feel the judgment coming from him. It's my own that tears me apart.
Yep.
So it's kind of weird that I worship something that I don't ever feel or believe inside of myself. You know what I mean?
Maybe that's like, I don't know, I might go off on a tangent here, but like, I'm like thinking about like what I said about teaching my kids the very things that I need to work on. What do you tell your kids when, you know, if they're afraid of the dark, or, you know, if they think there's a monster in your closet or something, you know, like
I tell them I found one. Like, it's not.
you would.
I'm like, there's no monster under your bed, child. It's in your closet. It's in your head.
But like
It's
you
hiding
as,
in the bathroom behind the curtain.
We're humans are the real monsters.
but you as like their father, like you're their comfort and their safety, right? So you tell them exactly what God is telling you in that situation. It's just, we don't like to hear it sometimes, but Jesus says, like, you know, right before the come to me all you who are weary, right before that, and in verse 25, he says, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent and have revealed them to infants. I think we need that infant mindset, or that childlike mindset when we talk to God or when we think about God, because if we overanalyze and overthink it too much, then we start to do exactly what we're doing. Like, we start to deconstruct, and, you know, we start to overanalyze and we start to get in our own minds and stuff. If we just approached God like a child approaches their father or their
Yeah,
whoever they look up to, I think it would be so much easier.
They approach you with like a fully inherent trust, which we don't do like children or infants do, because we've been wounded by this broken world, and you start throwing up
And we
defense
think we know better,
mechanisms
yeah.
all around your soul.
Yeah.
And
We think we know better.
Well, and if we go back to the beginning of this, where we were talking about the mindset that some people have, that this is all test and punishment and things like that. If we go back to that, then yeah, we're afraid to approach God because you're like, dear Lord, I have failed yet again. You know, I mean, we're going back to this punitive God. But if you know that God is this loving God whose grace abounds way more than any screw up that we could ever do, to be able to go to that God and say, I think I've messed up. And God goes, yeah, but I love you. It's going to be okay. Like, if I stop loving my kids the first time they've screwed up on me, dude, if my parents would have stopped loving me the first time I screwed up, I'd have been homeless too.
well, you even say in the sermon, to piggyback off that, some people claim Jesus never puts more on your plate than you can handle. That's just simply not true.
No, I hate that phrase.
It's one of the
I hear it
biggest
all
pet
the
peeves. It's
time.
bad
I hate
theology.
it.
Yeah.
It
You did
really
a whole
is.
sermon. You did that whole sermon series about things that weren't in the Bible, and that was you did a whole sermon
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, you even say that in the sermon. That's not in the Bible.
It is hands down the one thing that, and people believe that it's there.
They do.
But it's not in the Bible, and it's not true. There are plenty of people in this world that have way more on their plate than they can handle. It's the reason why the suicide rate is high, because people feel like they have more on their plate than they can handle. It's why burnout happens. It's why anxiety and depression happen. It's why we're all this ball of mess, is because we all have so much on our plate, and yeah, we can't handle it. And Jesus didn't put it on my plate. Half of it I shoved in there.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest of it, the broken world shoved in there. And then Jesus looks at it and goes, I'll help you with the plate.
I'll help you clean up this mess.
Yeah, I'll help you clean up this mess while you're dumping more on at the same time. But I will help you clean up
Oh,
this
good.
mess.
Now you lit it on fire.
It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
We got this.
Why is it alive?
Oh, look, a tail.
Oh, it's growling.
Okay, so let's before we lose this train of thought here, we're gonna move around the table to Andrew. Andrew, what of those four burdens do you feel most weighed down by?
I would definitely say the sin one like resonated the most with me. sin definitely makes me feel that overwhelming sense of like guilt. And you even said in the sermon, it can be good to feel that sense of remorse. You know that what you're doing is wrong, but mine tends to turn more into I am wrong and I am just a horrible person, and I start beating myself up, and that's when it really spirals down into that feeling of worthlessness, uselessness, just that place that some of us know too well that it's hard to dig yourself out of sometimes. And it's good to hear again and again, no matter how many times I hear it, that heavy burden is not mine to carry
alone.
Yeah. And it just helps tremendously. Even I know we've heard it time and time again, and it can get repetitive, but it bears repeating. You just need to hear it sometimes that burden is not yours to carry.
No, I agree. Sin is definitely one of the heavier ones that people can carry. When I was actively drinking, that sense of guilt. I was Paul. You even quote that Paul line that I love in here. I do the very thing that I hate, and I don't do the things I want to do. That was me when I was drinking. Every morning I'm sick, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do it again. Then 5:30 rolls around, and there I am walking out of Giant Eagle with another 18-pack of Miller Lite. Like, how did I even get here? And you feel guilty. And then when it turns into shame, there's no coming back. Like, somebody has to lift you out of that pit, or something has to lift you out of there. You're not going to get out of there on your own.
What was that analogy? Like the guy that's like down in like the pit or in the hole, and the guy climbs down in the hole with him. You used to like explain like anxiety and depression.
That actually isn't mine. I stole that from the West Wing. And I don't know if they stole it from somewhere else too. But I'm going to give West Wing credit because that's where I stole it from. The story is that there's a guy walking down the street and he falls into a hole. And he can't climb out of the hole. There's no ladders or anything like that. It's too steep for him. And so he's looking up, and down the street comes a doctor. And he's like, "Hey, doc, can you help me out of the hole?" And the doctor looks down and he writes him a prescription, tosses it down the hole, and keeps walking. About an hour later or so, he hears a priest walking down the road, and he says, "Father, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the priest writes him out a prayer, throws it down the hole, and walks on. Third guy walks on, and it turns out to be one of his friends. He's like, "Joe, it's me. Can you help me out of the hole?" Joe jumps in the hole with him. He said, "What are you doing? Now we're down here together. That didn't make any sense." And he said, "Yeah, but I've been in this hole before, and I know the way out." And the idea is that Jesus has been in the hole before and knows the way out. And a lot of times there's another person, like within the church, when you're having, when you're allowing the community to come together around you, a lot of times there's somebody who's been there before and can say, "I'm going to be in the hole with you, and I know the way out," because you can't get yourself out of the hole.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, Aaron Sorkin out here writing parables.
Oh, he's good. Like I said, I don't know if he stole it from somewhere else too, but
he's a pretty good writer. He probably came up with that.
Probably.
So I feel like we're sitting around the Inside Out like console right now. Josh is fear. I am sin. How about you, Pastor Eric? Which one of these four heavy burdens are resonating with you the most right now?
This one's gonna hurt. For me, it's grief. A big chunk of it stems from losing my mother back in January, who was one of the closest people to me. She was truly an inspiration for me. I would talk to her every day. I miss my mother greatly. Not a day goes by where I don't sit in that grief at some point. And so grief to me just feels like a heavy weight around my shoulders. It has me worn out physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, in every way, shape, or form. I'm working with it. I'm learning to cope with it. I'm learning a new life without her. But I also have, at least for the last 18 years, lived in a state of grief, in that a big part of my job is doing funerals. And as much as, you are told by every seminary professor, every religious leader that you can't have friends in the congregation, whatever. Um, you cannot do this right and not be close to people. You simply can't. And so I have done like 130 funerals at this point. And you cannot bury 130 of your friends and be okay about it or be nonchalant about it. You grasp onto the gospel with everything you have. You hold that resurrection in front of you at all times, and that's what pulls you through it. But I mean, I remember a time we were just doing funeral upon funeral. We had 6 funerals in 10 days, and it was like 2 of them were 2 at a time. 2 of them, one of them was a husband-wife who died 24 hours apart, and the other was a father who was bringing his daughter up to be buried. He had her cremains and was bringing her up to be buried, and before his son picked him up for the flight, died in his bedroom that day. So we were literally burying people 2 at a time. They were coming so fast. And I remember walking the altar rail at communion that Sunday. And, we talk about intrusive thoughts going through your head. And I remember passing out communion and thinking, which one of you won't be here next week? Like, you start to evaluate everyone by who's next.
I can't take much more, right?
Yeah. I mean, at one point, the only time I really contemplated leaving ministry was we had just, like, again, it was funeral upon funeral, and I was just like, I don't know that my heart can take this for 30 years and more of just getting close to people and then being with them when they die and then burying them and dealing with that grief. Since then, I've actually learned that, like, it's moved into a sacred realm for me where I can be with people when they're dying. I can be at their deaths. I can be at their funerals. And it's something that actually feeds me in faith. And that sounds kind of twisted, but it's this sacred moment that you get to be there and you get to do these things. But early on, that grief was just overtaking everything. It wouldn't allow me to function the way I needed to because the grief was just a wall that you were hitting. But right now for me, of those burdens, I would definitely say grief is at the top of my list. I own them all. But,
Yeah.
but for me in this moment, grief is dominant.
And you said it there, and you point to it in the sermon. Jesus offers the hope of the resurrection is some rest from this burden, and that's wonderful. And I think about that a lot, going through particularly difficult periods, especially right now in my life. But, one of the things that I'm looking for are ways to help people kind of presently when they are carrying these burdens, when they bring them to you. And you've been in ministry a long time. What are some ways you offer relief to people carrying these burdens other than just pointing at the Redeemer?
I mean, that's where you start.
Yeah.
But
it does help. I've been on the other end of that where you've pointed the way, and it does actually help.
There are times where you point to Jesus in that moment, and you will get back the I don't want to hear it right now.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Sometimes that's not what you need, and sometimes it's not what you want to hear in that moment.
And it may be what you need to hear. It may not be what you want to hear, but that's the piece that kind of resonates later down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, at the end, when someone says, well, I need hope and don't talk to me about the resurrection. And you're like, and that's all I have right now. Like, the resurrection is all we have in this moment. I'm a big believer in the ministry of presence. And by that, I mean, I think simply showing up for someone is the important part. You don't always remember what people said unless it was either profound or damaging. You usually don't remember what somebody said in a situation. Like, if you've ever been to a funeral of a loved one, 9 times out of 10, you don't remember what other people talked about. You remember the rude comment someone made that they didn't think was rude, but it was just downright horrible. Or you remember something that was profoundly comforting. Everything else falls in the middle of that. But you remember the people who showed up. And that's what the job of the church is when it comes to relieving all of these burdens. is showing up. Because as the people of God, we represent God to those people. And when people are in a time of, where is Jesus now? The people who show up are the ones representing where Jesus is right now. When you're going through a crisis, it's the people who show up and who don't turn their back and run because it's scary or it's uncomfortable, but they're the people who say, I'm going to be in the hole with you.
I think you also, you hit the nail on the head, as always, as usual.
Say, not as always.
As usual.
Not as always.
But there are people that view grief almost as like a weakness. Like you got to just like suck it up and like move on. Like life goes on. You got to take the next step forward. Be strong. Like you can't process that grief in in a healthy manner. And then there's the opposite side where you kind of hold on to that grief and you refuse to take that next step forward, and you're just kind of stuck in this constant limbo. I think both cases are a shining example of this entire sermon and what Jesus is trying to say. Give me your burdens, I will carry them so that you can take that next step forward. Take the time that you need to process it. Like you said, I'm sending you these people. You have people in your life that are willing to listen and willing to lend a hand or lend an ear just to listen to you talk and process it. But you have to take that next step forward.
And that's not just with grief either. Really that's with all of these, is that presence of people around you who are the non-judgmental presence. It's one thing to have people around you. It's another to have non-judgmental people around you and people who will be like, you are allowed to just be you. You are allowed to say the things that most people don't want to say in the daylight. You are allowed to rage and we will still be there. Like I have people who come into my office and they're just like, could you be quiet for half an hour? I just want to yell at someone. And they're like, I just need to rage about this. Don't take it personally. I just need to rage about life right now. And I just sit there while they literally just like yell about things, and they feel so much better in the end. And I'm not sitting there going like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're saying this. It's to be able to be that presence for someone where they're able to unload that. And they're like, oh, I just had to get that off my chest. Okay, thanks. I'll see you later. That was a big help. And you're like, I just sat here drinking coffee while you yelled. Wow. But that's that presence.
That's why he keeps popcorn in his office, because he sits there and eats it while they're doing it.
Wow, this is a dumpster fire.
Well,
that's why there's always coffee in my office. That's why there's always pop in my office. There's always refreshments.
You always got to be ready to chill.
That's right. That's why the chessboard sits in front of the couch in my office, is so if anybody ever wants to come in, play a game, and yell the whole time, I'm here for you.
One of the things you said was sometimes it's getting down in the hole with somebody. Mm-hmm. I've recently done this for the last couple years in a difficult situation that got more and more twisted and difficult and dangerous and ultimately exploded and ended terribly. And now I can't go anywhere near anybody else's burdens. Like I've become closed off and selfish. And I know it's a defense mechanism. I know, and we talked about this before the podcast. You have faith, Pastor Eric, that I'm going to get back out there and be an open and kind and loving person again.
You already are.
I was gonna say,
it hurts.
You're sitting here right now.
I can't imagine what it feels like to be you, sitting here listening to everybody else's weariness or pain or grief, because it is exhausting, especially when you're going through your own and it's very present and real, and they kind of like mix together, and it skews your entire perception of the world where you just, I don't want to trust anybody ever again.
But you will.
I'm going to believe you just like I do every other time. I'm going to trust you.
I know
on
your
this.
character. You are going to come back even stronger than you were before. But right now, you're hurting. And that's the burden in here, right? Like you got grief, you got fear, you got all kinds of stuff in there. Right now, you don't need to carry everyone's stuff. Right now, you need to carry yours. And yours is a part of the people around you, absolutely. And that's okay. It is okay to just be like, you know what? I need to tend to me right now. I cannot carry everyone's stuff because I need to tend to me. That is all right, because they have Jesus too.
I'm not used to being the flower in your gardener and flower analogy, which I don't think you said on this.
No, we were talking about this before the podcast. And this, again, I stole from, I watch a lot of television. I stole this one from television too.
Maybe he should start stealing from the Bible.
No, it's just a really good analogy. Again, I don't know if they stole it from somewhere, but it was from a show called A Million Little Things. And there's an argument happening at one point, and someone's feeling guilty about the fact that they're always the person who's there for the other person, and now they can't be, and they feel weak. And the third person says, in every relationship, there's a gardener and a flower. And at different times, you're either one. Sometimes you're the flower and need to be taken care of, and sometimes you're the gardener who's taking care of the flower. And you go back and forth. It's really hard when you're both the gardener with nothing to gardener. You're both the flower and no one's there to take care of you. But the reality of every relationship is sometimes you're the gardener, sometimes you're the flower. Josh, it is okay right now to be the flower.
Being the flower is scary.
Yeah.
Because now you're sitting out there under the beating sun or the freezing rain,
tornadoes,
and you're just rooted to the ground. You can't do anything. You're relying on somebody else to pick you up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not taught to do that.
You should
in our society.
And that's the problem that people have with Jesus, is Jesus is the constant gardener, right? Jesus is the one who is always tending to everyone, who's tending to the other gardeners and things like that. But that's why faith is so hard on people, is because in faith, you have to be able to let Jesus take care of you without being able to return it. You can't take care of
No, I can't
Jesus.
pay him back. We can't get square for any of this.
You don't have to.
I know.
Stop trying to get even with the house. This is what grace is all about. Grace is being able to take something that you haven't earned, that you haven't deserved, that is a gift to you freely, where Jesus can just say, I'm going to love you and you don't have to do anything. I'm going to forgive you and you don't have to do anything. I am going to be your gardener.
Why are me and Andrew so broken that that's so offensive?
Well, I was going to say it like
How is that offensive?
Well, we don't want it, clearly. We don't want to hear it.
You don't want to be the flower?
I mean, I want to. I do. But it requires trust and faith, and it's hard right now.
Yeah.
Because
After
we want to be in control.
Yeah, I want to be in control because things are scary right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't really want to relinquish control. You're like, no, I got this. When in fact, I never actually have.
There it is. You never had control to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a realization that you don't have any control, but you never had control.
This is a lesson I've learned like 7 different times in my life where I'm like, oh yeah, I never actually had control of this. I'm done.
Mm-hmm. And one day you're going to look back at this or, moments before this and be like, yep. Okay, there it was.
That's
there
where
was.
God
Yep,
was.
there it was.
God was there and there and there.
Yep. You may not realize
and 20
it at
years
the
from now,
moment.
God will be there too.
Yep.
Richard Rohr says it in pretty much every book he writes, that God comes to you disguised as your own life. And I've noticed this pattern a lot where I keep seeming to have the same struggle with either sin or grief or whatever it is over and over until I finally do let go of that control. And then the next one pops up. It just feels like a never-ending cycle. But like, he's always there and always present. And it's not so much as a test, but like, you're going to get there if you get over this or get past this.
It does feel like that sometimes. Like, we're both like looking at Pastor Eric, like he has the answers. Like,
well, I think
it does feel like that. Like
don't.
one time, I know, like, it just like it was one thing after the other, and then you feel like you finally conquered this one thing, and then it's like, bam, there's something.
You know why I
else.
think,
and
this is just pure conjecture on my speculation on my part. I think because the only thing he desires of you is happiness. And the only way to really get there is to let go of all this stuff and just be present and live. And it's not going to be perfect. It's still going to be messy, but this illusion of control and like really holding on to things only makes things worse. I've watched it in other people's lives as well as my own. The more you try to control or hold on to things, the worse you make it.
the conclusions that I have tried to come to, like in this, like more recent like walk, God may not be putting the things like I mentioned earlier, the analogy of like him putting things in my path and like stomping my face into the mud when kicking me while I'm down. You know what I mean? Like he may not be doing those things.
He's so mean,
Right,
Andrew.
I know, right? He may not be doing those things, but he is providing you with experiences, things that are helping you. He is equipping you with the tools to overcome whatever it is you're facing. You may not realize it, it may not feel like it. So no, he's not manipulating you like a puppet, like a puppet master, but he is helping you along, like you said, with, about not having more on your plate than you can handle. The reality is there's nothing on your plate that Jesus can't handle. He is equipping you with all the tools to handle the things that you're facing. And sometimes you just have to trust that, and you just have to cling to that. I think the only one we didn't cover is work then, right? As far as the 4 burdens.
I wish that was my
this
burden.
sermon.
I work here. I'm not allowed to talk about that right now.
I was going to say, I'm a teacher on summer vacation, so I'm a big fan of my work right about now.
I'm not going to talk about my employer.
I do want to go back to your employer,
Okay.
because you said something earlier that I've never heard you say before. I did not know this was a thing.
An original.
You had seminary professors telling you not to be friends with people in your congregation?
Yeah, that you can't have really close friendships.
What's
You
their
can, you have relationship with people, but that you shouldn't have, like, there so many boundaries in place that you should not be that close to people.
to protect yourself from burnout and
that and there are times when you can become so close to someone that they either can't come to you with problems anymore because they don't want to burden you or something like that, or I don't want to, I'm so close to them that if I'm vulnerable with them, they'll look at me different. I can't get into confession mode with them because who wants to tell their friend, the nasty thing they just did, that type of a thing. And so it keeps the boundaries in place. And it's true that you need to keep that boundary in place. It really is. But there are also other ways of working around that. And you become close to people if you've been with them this long.
I've actually told you, and I've even told my therapist this, and you both gave me the same response. That's my job, right? That's what you're paying me to do, because it's like this sense of guilt. Like, I know that you're a human being as much as, we hold clergy and pastors in this, like, higher esteem than, sometimes I'd feel guilty and I feel bad just like unloading all of my garbage on to your plate. Like, I know that you are a human being. So, and
it's not because you're our friend. It's just because it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard, and it feels like, not that you don't care, because I know you do. It's just, it's this weird thing where you don't want to unload your baggage onto somebody else because I don't know, you feel this obligation to, like, take care of it yourself. I don't know if it's a sense of, like,
I know
pride.
how big of a burden it is to me that why would I want to put that on you too? That type of a thing.
And you've both told me,
this is just going to worry him.
This is my job. Like, you're literally paying me to like tell you that, So I don't know. It's a difficult thing.
I also imagine that there's a good population of people that have the same problem going to Jesus with things, because I know what a burden. Like, I don't want to burden Jesus with this. Are you kidding me? If you think that's weighing Jesus down, get another job, dude. Like, being able to come to each other and to share those burdens is a way to be able to come to Jesus at the same time. But we just need someone physically there who can talk to us through those things and say, let me carry this for you for a while.
I've actually literally said that before. Like, I remember I can't remember who I was talking to, but I remember telling them, like, I think God has bigger things on his plate right now than, something so ridiculous or so petty that I was dealing with. I felt, uncomfortable or, taking it to God, because I genuinely felt like, if this is what God's worried about, like, he has way bigger, fish to fry. He's got way bigger things on his plate.
Because that's the thing, is that Jesus always cares. I mean, that caring isn't a question. It probably says more about our relationships with other people around us and how we pull Jesus into this very human realm of, well, this is how Jesus must function too, because this is how people around me at some point have functioned, or this is how I think I function around other people, or things like that. It's very much how we've been taught to do relationship as well, right? Like, have you ever heard that phrase, like, if you burden your friends, pretty soon you won't have any? Are you kidding? Like, that is the worst model of friendship ever. Like, I want my friends to be able to come to me with their burdens. I want to be able to carry them for them too. There are times that, I know we've talked a lot about grief and funerals and things, but I hear this all the time at funerals where someone say, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. I always tell the people who are told that, like, come up with a list. As soon as someone says, if there's anything I can do, if there's anything I can do for you, you just let me know. I'll do anything I can for you. And be like, yeah, my garage really needs painted.
I will be honest, in this very difficult situation that my wife and I have been dealing with for the past month, we actually did let people help and care for us. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. They didn't want anything in return. They didn't try to lord it over me. It was just pure, genuine sympathy and compassion. And then there was me projecting all the stuff that all the people around me have done in the past onto genuinely good people who didn't deserve it.
Because that's not the norm. Like,
no, and
sometimes, like, I offer, like you said, like, is there anything I can do? I genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, like, yeah, I just need somebody to talk to, I would be there in a heartbeat and I would listen to them and, whatever they need. But I don't think that's the norm. Like, we are so conditioned to think that, no, I got it. No, it's okay. I got it. I can take care of it. It's okay to admit that you don't got it. Like, you need help. You need somebody to talk to.
Yeah, my
You
genuine
need help.
response is like, this person needs help. What do you want me to do? Let me help. And that's the end of it. That's all I want to do. But, I've grown up with a lot of people who are keeping score.
I don't know if people take that as a weakness or they interpret that as like
maybe they just
selfish.
don't trust what you're going to do with that information if they let you in. You know what I mean? That's been me.
Let's change the norm. Like,
that's
honestly,
what we're doing here.
Right. If you're listening and if you feel like a burden, like you're not, you just need to find the right people to care and
find you
good.
a loving community of
Find-
people who can gather around you, because living in community is how we fix this problem. We tend to forget that even God needs community, right? That's the whole Trinity piece, is that even God needs to exist in community of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. If we are made in the image of God, we are made to be in community as well. It's when we try and Lone Ranger the whole thing that it doesn't work out. The times that have gotten me deepest into the hole are the times where I have said, I can do this myself.
Oh yeah.
I can get out of this hole. I will claw the walls until I can see the sky again. And all I was doing was digging the pit deeper.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And there are certain things you can't climb out of. You can't. You need the community. When someone says, I don't need to go to church to be faithful, I laugh every time, because I think being faithful and having the ability to be faithful does require community. It requires other people to be around you who you can help out of the pit, who they can help you out of the pit.
I've had people run away from me in my situation in the past. Like, they actually have. They've just turned around and been done because it's just too icky. It's messy. They don't want to deal with my grief or it's just too troublesome for them, even though it requires nothing of them other than to listen. And I guess part of me has been afraid too that, like, maybe this is too much for the church. Maybe this is too much for the people in it.
We're not going anywhere.
I know in my head that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but I haven't even been here for 2 years yet. I wish this would have happened later and I could have leaned on more people. But I've tried to be like, you
still got the same amount of people you can lean on.
I know. I've just tried to be like, nope, I can do this. I'm not going to let it get out and infect these people.
Has anybody in the church like reached out to you? Like,
several.
That's
yeah.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Because that is the ultimate like test of, like you said, community. You said, anytime you're going through a difficult time, like even, like Josh said, just being out of church for 2 weeks, people are like, where's Josh? We miss Josh. Where's, where, like,
our Bible study every
out,
Monday night at 6:00 at the church office. Shameless plug. Our Bible study every Monday. Josh was a part of our Bible study for a while, and we're hoping he'll be able to come back when all the dust settles.
I'm ready.
Oh, but every Monday night they ask how Josh and his family are, and then they stop and they pray for him.
That's the sense of community that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And that's the sense of community that not just St. John, but just a church family in general. I mean, my mom will tell you, we were talking about grief. We've talked about grief a lot, but when we were going through a very difficult time, we lost a lot of people in a short span of time in my life. And if it weren't for our church family, I have no doubt that things would have combusted a little bit further than, maybe even they already did, because there were people that were volunteering to like cook us dinner and watch my sister and I, like, just to take what little burden they could off of my mom. And that, if that's not a true example of a Christ-like community, then I don't know what is.
Now, this is all good, but like sometimes it's easier said than done than to find this community. Like, if you're not in one,
400 Hill Boulevard, East Liverpool, Ohio, 43920.
another shameless
Shameless
plug.
10:15 Sunday mornings.
If you're not near here though,
Yes,
and you're in a church and it doesn't feel this way, they do exist. You can find one.
there
Keep
are
looking.
a ton of churches out there, and by and large, they're beautiful people.
So we've taken each of these 4 burdens that you talked about in the sermon. We've broken them down. We've talked about how each one has shown themselves in our lives and how we've kind of tackled them and taken them on. But in a world where it sometimes feels like Thanos has, the infinity gauntlet of burdens. He's got fear, grief, work, sin. He's got all the infinity stones in his gauntlet. When all of these things come together, like what message are you trying to portray through this sermon for somebody maybe who's listening, who is dealing with anxiety or dealing with depression, who's going through grief, who's facing economic trouble? I mean, like, I think about these things all the time, and I like to think I'm pretty comfortable, like in my current situation, but like someone who's going through any kind of crisis in their life, all 4 of these things, you don't just get one at a time. Like,
No.
we each picked one, but all of these things sometimes come crashing down. What is the overall message that you're trying to convey here?
Okay, so you brought up a Marvel,
Of course I did.
type of thing. So I'm gonna have to play with your Marvel image of Thanos there. Let me ask you this: in the end, spoiler alert, skip ahead by like 30 seconds if you haven't seen these movies yet. In the end, does Thanos win?
No.
No.
Well, that's to be debated, but that's on a whole nother podcast.
Okay. We're not going to get
You
into that.
you don't argue with a Marvel nerd.
I know, right? Right? Does Thanos win in the movies at the end of Endgame?
No.
No. And I would say the same thing is true of every one of those stones, as it were, of burden, is that in the end, Jesus wins, which allows us to win, right? In the end, all of the burdens we carry right now will be lifted. That there's not one of those that we can guarantee are permanent. Work, not permanent. Sin, not permanent. Grief, not permanent. Fear, not permanent. Jesus wins in the end. In the end, there is resurrection and new life and new hope, and that new world does not include any of those 4 stones.
Well said, Padre.
And as always, dear listener, as you go on your way, may Christ go with you. Christ before you to lead you. Christ behind you to encourage you. Christ beside you to befriend you. Christ above you to watch over you. And Christ within you to give you peace.
Amen.